My name is Sarah Chen, and for 26 years, I lived as the overlooked daughter in a family that believed success was a man's game. This is the story of how I went from being dismissed as the artsy one to owning the very company that employed my entire family, and how I used that power to rewrite the rules they had written for me. Growing up in the Chen household meant understanding that some dreams were taken seriously, and others were simply indulged. My older brother Michael was the golden child, Harvard MBA, sharp suits, and our parents' chosen successor. I was the daughter who was expected to marry well and maybe help with the books someday. My parents, Linda and Robert Chen, had built Chen and Associates from nothing in the 1980s. What started as a small accounting firm had grown into a mid-sized financial consulting company with over 200 employees. Michael had been groomed since childhood to take over, while I was encouraged to pursue suitable interests like art history and languages. Sarah has such a creative mind, my mother would tell relatives, as if my computer science degree and passion for technology were charming hobbies rather than serious pursuits. She'll make some man very happy someday, and maybe she can help with the company's marketing materials. The breaking point came during my college graduation dinner. I had just finished my degree in computer science and software engineering, graduating summa cum laude. I was excited to share my plans for a tech startup I'd been developing with my roommate Emma, a revolutionary project management platform that could streamline workflows for medium-sized businesses. I've been working on this application for 2 years, I explained eagerly, pulling up prototypes on my laptop. It's going to revolutionize how companies manage their projects and communications. Emma and I have already secured our first round of seed funding from Sarah, sweetheart, that's wonderful, my mother interrupted with that patronizing smile I knew so well. It's so nice that you have a little project to keep you busy. Michael, tell your sister about the real opportunities at the company. But Mom, this isn't a little project. We've already got investors interested and the beta testing shows. Honey, my father said, not even looking up from cutting his steak. Playing with computers is a fine hobby, but let's talk about your future. Michael has been developing a marketing position that would be perfect for you. Good benefits. Flexible hours for when you start a family. I don't want a marketing position, I said, my voice rising. I want to build my own company. I want to solve real problems with real technology. Michael leaned back in his chair with that condescending smile that had annoyed me since childhood. Sarah, I get it. College fills everyone's head with big dreams. But let's be realistic here. You've never run a business. You've never managed people. You've never had to make decisions that affect millions of dollars. This is a real business opportunity, I insisted. We're not just playing around, we're solving actual problems for actual companies. With what credibility? Michael laughed, and my parents joined in. Sarah, you're talking about competing with established software companies, enterprise solutions that have been around for decades. You think you and your college roommate are going to disrupt entire industries? My father finally looked at me, his expression mixing amusement with pity. Sweetheart, I've been in business for 30 years. I've seen countless young people, especially young women, come through our doors with grand ideas and no understanding of how the real world works. The difference between dreamers and achievers is recognizing your limitations. Your little computer project is adorable, my mother added, reaching over to pat my hand like I was 12 years old. But it's time to think practically. Join the family business, learn from Michael, and maybe in a few years you'll understand how real business works. Besides, Michael said, his voice taking on that protective big brother tone that made my skin crawl, the tech industry is brutal for women. Why put yourself through that when you have a secure position waiting for you here? That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, their words echoing in my head. Little project, adorable, hobby, cute. The casual dismissal hurt more than outright rejection would have. They didn't even consider my work worthy of serious criticism. It was just a phase to be outgrown, like wanting to be a princess or a pop star. But the worst part was the way they looked at me. Not with anger or disappointment, but with that indulgent affection you'd show a child who insisted they were going to open a lemonade stand and become a millionaire. They genuinely believed I was being naive and unrealistic, and they thought they were protecting me from inevitable failure. Against my family's wishes, Emma and I launched TechFlow Solutions from my tiny studio apartment. We lived on instant noodles and determination, working 18-hour days to build something that would prove everyone wrong. Our savings dwindled, credit cards maxed out, but we believed in what we were creating. The first year was brutal in ways I hadn't anticipated. Not only were we facing the typical startup challenges of finding clients and managing cash flow, but I was also battling the constant assumption that I wasn't the real decision maker. Potential clients would address their questions to Emma, assuming she was the CEO because she was older, or they'd ask to speak to the technical founder when I was standing right in front of them. "Is your husband involved in the business?" one potential investor asked during our third pitch meeting. "It's always good to have male oversight for financial decisions." "I'm not married," I replied through gritted teeth, "and I have an MBA in addition to my computer science degree." Of course," he said, clearly not listening, "but you might want to consider bringing on a male co-founder. Investors tend to be more comfortable with mixed-gender leadership teams." We didn't get that investment. Every family gathering became an opportunity for subtle undermining of my little business adventure. Michael would regale everyone with stories about major deals he'd closed, while I was asked if I was still playing with that app thing. "How's the startup going?" became the family's running joke. My aunt would ask with barely concealed amusement, while my teenage cousins would exchange knowing glances. Even my own mother would introduce me to her friends as "our daughter, who's going through her entrepreneurial phase." The absolute lowest point came during Christmas dinner that first year. I had just lost a potential major client who chose a competitor specifically because they wanted a more established company with male leadership. I was exhausted, frustrated, and questioning everything. "You know, Sarah," my father announced to the entire table, "that marketing position is still available. Michael's been very patient, but we can't hold it forever." "Thanks, but I'm committed to TechFlow," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Committed to what?" Michael laughed. "Sarah, I looked up your company online. You have a website that looks like it was made by a college student and 2 employees, you and Emma. That's not a company. That's an expensive hobby." The table erupted in laughter. My grandmother, the only person who had ever truly supported my ambitions, wasn't there anymore. She had passed away 6 months earlier, taking with her the one voice that had always believed in my potential to build something meaningful. "I'm building something real," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "We're growing, we're learning, and we're creating value." "Real companies have real revenue," my father said, his tone sharpening. "Real companies have real employees and real clients. What you have is an expensive lesson in why women need to be more realistic about their career choices." "Robert, don't be so harsh," my mother said, but her tone was pitying rather than supportive. "Sarah is learning valuable lessons about the business world. Sometimes we need to fail before we can appreciate what we have." "I just don't want to see you waste your prime years on a fantasy," my father continued. "You're 23 years old, Sarah. Most women your age are starting families or building real careers. What happens when you're 30 and still playing entrepreneur?" That night, I walked around the block for 2 hours in the snow, my grandmother's voice echoing in my memory. "Sarah, you see solutions where others see only problems. Don't let anyone convince you that being a woman makes your dreams smaller." She had been an entrepreneur herself, starting a small catering business in the 1960s when women rarely owned businesses. Before she died, she had pulled me aside and pressed a sealed envelope into my hands. "For when you need it most," she had whispered. "Don't let them clip your wings." I had put the envelope in my desk drawer, unopened, waiting for the right moment. That Christmas night, I finally opened it. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a note, "For my granddaughter who refuses to be small. The world needs what you're building. All my love, Grandma Rose." I cried that night. Tears of grief, frustration, and determination all mixed together. But those tears weren't surrender. They were the crystallization of my resolve to prove that their limitations weren't mine. With my grandmother's gift, Emma and I were able to hire our first real employees and invest in better infrastructure. We were strategic about our hires, bringing on experienced developers who believed in our vision and weren't threatened by female leadership. The breakthrough came in our second year when we landed a contract with Morrison Industries, a mid-sized manufacturing company struggling with project coordination across multiple departments. Their CEO, Patricia Morrison, was one of the few female executives in the industry, and she understood both the value of our solution and the challenges we faced as women entrepreneurs. "You've solved problems we didn't even know we had," she told us during a quarterly review. "This isn't just software, it's a complete transformation of how we work. And frankly, I'm impressed by how you've built this company despite all the obstacles." Patricia became more than a client. She became a mentor and advocate. She introduced us to other female executives, helped us navigate the boys' club of business development, and taught us how to command respect in boardrooms full of men who assumed we were there to take notes. "The secret," she told me during one of our monthly coffee meetings, "is to be so undeniably good that they can't dismiss you. Make your success impossible to ignore." Word spread through Patricia's network. We landed 3 more clients in the following month, then 6 more the month after that. By the end of year 2, we had 23 employees and were turning a real profit. But success brought new challenges. As we grew, we attracted attention from larger competitors who began using our gender against us in sales meetings. "Do you really want to trust your critical business systems to a startup run by a couple of girls?" they would ask potential clients. "What happens when they get married and have babies?" "We need to be smarter than they are," Emma said during one of our strategy sessions. "We can't compete on their terms because the game is rigged. We need to create a new game where our strengths matter more than their assumptions." That's when I developed what I called the stealth strategy. Instead of trying to compete directly with established players who would always see us as the girl company, we would become indispensable to them. We would partner with traditional firms, become so valuable to their operations that they would depend on us. Then, when the time was right, we would either acquire them or demonstrate our superiority so decisively that the market would have no choice but to recognize our leadership. The first target was obvious: Chen and Associates. I didn't approach my family's company directly. Instead, I had Emma's former colleague, David Kim, reach out to Michael as a potential client. TechFlow Solutions would be presented as an innovative young company looking to streamline project management for professional services firms. Michael took the meeting, of course. He loved being courted by eager salespeople. It fed his ego to have people pitch him solutions. What he didn't know was that I had spent months analyzing Chen and Associates' operations, identifying their inefficiencies, and developing solutions specifically tailored to their needs. The presentation was flawless. Our software could integrate their client management, project tracking, billing, and communication systems into one seamless platform. The ROI projections were conservative but compelling. The implementation timeline was realistic and achievable. "This is exactly what we've been looking for," Michael told David during the follow-up call. "Your CEO, Sarah Chen, She's not related to our family, is she? Different Chen, I assume? I believe she mentioned having family in the business world, David replied casually, sticking to the script we had rehearsed. But she's very focused on the technical side of things, prefers to let the project managers handle client relations. It was technically true. I had decided to stay behind the scenes during the initial implementation, letting our account managers handle the day-to-day interactions while I observed from a distance and refined our approach. The implementation went perfectly. Within 6 months, Chen and Associates' productivity had increased by 40%. Client satisfaction scores hit all-time highs. Employee complaints about communication and workflow problems virtually disappeared. Michael was ecstatic. He started recommending TechFlow to other companies, bragging about how he had discovered this innovative solution. He even gave an interview to the local business journal about leveraging cutting-edge technology to optimize traditional business models. The key is identifying promising solutions before they become mainstream, he said in the article. It takes vision to see beyond the surface and recognize genuine innovation when you find it. I framed that article and hung it in my office, right next to my grandmother's photo. By our 4th year, TechFlow Solutions had grown into a legitimate force in the industry. We had over 150 employees, offices in 3 cities, and a client list that included some of the region's most successful companies. Our revenue had grown from $80,000 in year 1 to $15 million in year 4. But I still hadn't revealed my identity to my family. To them, I was still the daughter who had abandoned practical career planning for an unrealistic fantasy. They knew TechFlow Solutions as the company that had revolutionized their operations, but they didn't know who owned it. The cognitive dissonance was surreal. Michael would call me on Sunday afternoons to lecture me about my lack of career progress and ask when I was going to get serious about my future, while on Monday mornings his assistant would process payments to the company I had built. "I heard through the grapevine that you're still doing that computer thing," he said during one particularly condescending phone call. "Sarah, you're 26 years old. Most women your age are getting married, buying houses, starting families. What are you actually accomplishing with this extended adolescence?" "I'm learning a lot," I replied honestly. "Building something meaningful." "Building what?" "From what I can see, you're still in that same tiny apartment, still driving that same beat-up Honda. If your business was actually successful, wouldn't you have something to show for it?" What he didn't know was that I had been reinvesting every penny back into the company. My personal lifestyle hadn't changed because I was focused on growth, not status symbols. I was building an empire while he was building a reputation. "Success looks different for different people," I said. "Success is always visible," Michael laughed. "Trust me, I know what real success looks like. I just closed a deal this quarter that brought in more revenue than your little hobby probably makes in a year." That deal, I happen to know, was only possible because of the efficiency improvements our software had brought to his operations. The irony was exquisite. The most painful part was watching my parents' continued dismissal of my choices. At family dinners, they would openly discuss their disappointment that I hadn't settled down or found my direction. My mother had started making pointed comments about my biological clock, while my father would shake his head sadly whenever my name came up in business conversations. "We just want her to be happy," I overheard my mother telling my aunt during a holiday gathering. "But she's so stubborn. She won't listen to reason about this business fantasy." "Maybe she needs to fail completely before she'll accept help," my aunt replied. "Some people have to learn the hard way." The opportunity came sooner than I had expected. Chen and Associates was facing a crisis that threatened their reputation and financial stability. A major client had discovered significant inefficiencies in their service delivery, not illegal, but sloppy enough to raise serious questions about the firm's competence and attention to detail. "We need to completely overhaul our operations," my father told the emergency board meeting. Our systems, our processes, our entire approach to client management. This isn't just about damage control. It's about rebuilding trust and demonstrating our commitment to excellence. I knew about the meeting because Patricia Morrison sat on Chen and Associates' advisory board. Over the years, she had become not just a mentor but a strategic ally, impressed by our company's growth and my leadership. "There's a company I think you should consider acquiring," she told my father during the meeting. TechFlow Solutions. They're the ones who built your current systems, and they've been growing rapidly. Acquiring them would give you complete control over your technology infrastructure and send a strong message about your commitment to innovation. "How much would something like that cost?" Michael asked. "Probably around 25 million," Patricia replied. "But it would be worth every penny. They have contracts with most of your major competitors. Their technology is genuinely superior to anything else in the market, and their CEO is one of the sharpest business minds I've ever encountered." My father was intrigued, but Michael was skeptical. 25 million for a tech startup seems excessive, especially one run by, what did you say the CEO's background was? Sarah Chen. No relation to your family, obviously. Has a computer science degree and an MBA. She's built something truly impressive, Patricia explained, watching their faces carefully. "I think you'd be surprised by what she's accomplished." I was watching this conversation through the conference room's live video feed, a feature I had quietly included in our software package for quality assurance purposes. The ethics were questionable, but I needed to understand how they were evaluating the potential acquisition. "Set up a meeting," my father decided. "I want to see what we're dealing with." The acquisition meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in Chen and Associates' main conference room. I had been in that room countless times as a child, listening to my father conduct business, dreaming of the day I might sit at that table as an equal rather than a curiosity. I arrived early, wearing my best power suit and carrying a briefcase full of documents that would change everything. Patricia Morrison was already there, chatting with my parents and Michael about market conditions and industry trends. "Sarah should be here any minute," Patricia said, checking her watch with barely concealed anticipation. "I think you'll find her quite different from what you might expect." "I'm curious to meet her," my father said. Building a successful company from nothing is impressive, regardless of the industry. "Especially impressive for a woman in tech," my mother added. "That takes real determination." The irony was overwhelming. They were about to meet the daughter they had dismissed as impractical and unrealistic, who had built the company they now desperately wanted to acquire. I knocked on the door and entered. The silence was absolute. My mother's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Michael's mouth fell open, and for the first time in my life, I saw genuine shock in his eyes. My father stared at me as if I had materialized from thin air. "Good morning, everyone," I said, setting my briefcase on the table and taking the seat directly across from Michael. "Thank you for your interest in acquiring TechFlow Solutions. I'm Sarah Chen, founder and CEO." "This is impossible," Michael whispered. "I assure you it's not only possible, it's documented," I replied, pulling out our audited financial statements and growth projections. TechFlow Solutions has been profitable for 3 consecutive years. We currently manage systems for 47 companies, including Chen and Associates. Our revenue last year was $15.2 million, with a net profit margin of 18%. My mother finally found her voice. "Sarah, what is this? How is this possible?" "It's possible because I did exactly what I said I was going to do 4 years ago," I replied calmly. "I built a real business. I solved real problems. I created real value. I just did it without your permission or approval." "But you're still living modestly," my father said, his voice shaking. You're still driving that old car, still in that small apartment. If this is real, where's the wealth? The wealth is in the business, I explained. Reinvested in growth, employee development, research and innovation. I've been building something sustainable, not just profitable. Patricia Morrison smiled. I should mention that Sarah has been aware of your interest in acquisition for several weeks. We've been discussing terms. Terms? My father asked weakly. $25 million, I said, sliding a comprehensive proposal across the table. That's our valuation based on current revenue, growth projections, and market position. However, given the existing relationship between our companies, I'm prepared to offer you a different arrangement entirely. I don't want to sell TechFlow solutions to Chen and Associates, I continued, watching their faces transform from confusion to understanding to horror. I want TechFlow solutions to acquire Chen and Associates. The explosion was immediate and chaotic. That's absurd, Michael shouted, his voice cracking. Chen and Associates is worth 3 times what any startup could be worth. Actually, it's not, Patricia Morrison interjected smoothly, sliding her own analysis across the table. I've been conducting a comprehensive evaluation of Chen and Associates' market position and asset value. With the recent client issues and increasing competitive pressure from more innovative firms, the current fair market value is approximately $18 million. $18 million? My father gasped, his face going pale. The business model is outdated, I explained with clinical precision. Client acquisition costs are rising faster than revenue growth. Employee retention is declining due to outdated systems and processes, and your profit margins have been shrinking for 3 consecutive years. Without significant technological innovation and operational modernization, Chen and Associates will continue to lose market share to more agile competitors. But we've been growing, Michael protested desperately. You've been growing because of the efficiency improvements from our software integration, I replied, pulling out a detailed analysis I had prepared months earlier. Without TechFlow Solutions managing your systems, your productivity would drop by 40% overnight, your client satisfaction scores would plummet, and your operational costs would skyrocket. You've become completely dependent on us, and you didn't even realize it. I placed a thick merger proposal in front of my father. This is a comprehensive plan for TechFlow Solutions to acquire Chen and Associates for $20 million, paid over 5 years. All current employees retain their positions with improved benefits. All current clients are retained with enhanced service levels. The Chen and Associates brand continues to exist, but operations are integrated with our technology platform and management structure. And what about current management? My father asked, his voice barely audible. You'll both remain on the board of directors with full voting rights, I said. Michael, you'll continue managing client relationships, but you'll report to our chief operating officer and work within our established protocols. Dad, you'll transition to an advisory role, helping us understand traditional accounting practices and industry relationships. My mother finally spoke. And you? What's your position in all this? I smiled, and for the first time in my life, I saw my parents truly see me. Chief Executive Officer of the merged company. Your boss. The next 4 hours were the most intense of my life. Michael alternated between anger, denial, and desperate attempts to find flaws in my proposal. My parents struggled to reconcile the daughter they thought they knew with the business owner sitting across from them. I don't understand how this happened, my mother said during a brief recess, her voice small and confused. How did you build all this without us knowing? You weren't paying attention, I replied simply. For 4 years, I told you exactly what I was doing. You chose not to believe it was possible. But you never showed us profits, never displayed success markers, Michael said, his usual confidence completely shattered. Successful business owners drive luxury cars, live in expensive houses, wear designer clothes. Some do, I agreed. Others prioritize reinvestment and sustainable growth over status symbols. I learned that philosophy from Grandma Rose, actually. She taught me that real wealth isn't about what you own, it's about what you build. Don't bring Grandma into this, my father said sharply, but his voice lacked conviction. She's already in this, I replied, pulling out her worn envelope. She left me $50,000 to start TechFlow Solutions, along with advice you never bothered to give me. She believed in my vision when my own family saw only foolish fantasy. The room fell silent. They had all assumed I was funding my hobby with credit cards and naive optimism. None of them knew about my grandmother's crucial early investment. She never told us, my mother whispered. She knew you wouldn't understand, I said. She saw potential in me that you couldn't see. Vision where you saw only impracticality. Strength where you saw only stubbornness. Patricia Morrison leaned forward. The offer is more than generous, she said. Sarah could easily acquire a dozen companies like Chen and Associates with her current resources and investor backing. She's offering to preserve the family business while modernizing it for the future. What if we refuse? Michael asked, his voice hollow. Then you refuse, I said with a shrug that took enormous effort to keep casual. But your current contract with TechFlow Solutions expires in 6 months. We'll be too busy serving our other 46 clients to renew. You'll need to find alternative software solutions, retrain your entire staff, and explain to your clients why their service experience suddenly deteriorated. You'd sabotage your own family? My father asked, his voice tight with a mixture of anger and respect. I'd prioritize my business and my employees, I corrected. Just like you taught me to do. Just like you've been doing for 30 years. The difference is that I built something strong enough to survive without depending on family connections. They asked for a week to consider the offer. I gave them 72 hours. During those 3 days, I received emotional phone calls from each of them, trying different approaches to change the terms or avoid the reality of what was happening. My mother appealed to family loyalty and tradition. My father tried to negotiate on price and timeline. Michael alternated between anger and desperate attempts at reconciliation. You're being vindictive, he accused during one late-night call, his voice breaking. This isn't about business, it's about revenge. It's about justice, I replied. For 4 years you told me I was being unrealistic. You dismissed my work, mocked my ambitions, and treated me like a child playing dress-up. Now you want to negotiate as equals? We were trying to protect you, Michael said. We didn't want you to get hurt by unrealistic expectations. The business world is brutal, especially for women. You were protecting your own assumptions, I countered. You couldn't accept that I might succeed in ways you didn't understand, in markets you'd never explored. Maybe you're right, he admitted quietly. Maybe we were wrong about your capabilities. But we're still family, Sarah. That has to count for something. Family supports each other's dreams, I said. Family celebrates each other's achievements. Family doesn't spend 4 years waiting for each other to fail. So what do you want? Michael asked desperately. A public apology? Recognition? What would make this right? I want acknowledgement, I said. I want respect. I want you to understand that my success isn't luck or accident. It's the result of 4 years of strategic thinking, hard work, and competent leadership that you refused to recognize. On the morning of the 3rd day, they accepted the offer. The merger was completed 8 months later, after extensive legal review and regulatory approval. The process was complex, but the outcome was clear. I now owned my family's business. Chen and Associates became a subsidiary of TechFlow Solutions, and I became my family's CEO. The first company-wide meeting was surreal. Standing at the front of the same conference room where I had once been patted on the head and told to be realistic, I addressed the 200 employees of Chen and Associates, including my parents and brother. Change is never easy, I told the assembled staff, but change is also opportunity. TechFlow Solutions has grown from 2 women in a studio apartment to a market leader in 4 years. We've accomplished that by focusing on solutions rather than limitations, by embracing innovation rather than tradition, and by measuring success through value creation rather than status preservation. I looked directly at Michael. We've succeeded by believing in possibilities, even when others couldn't see them. The integration proceeded smoothly. Our software was already managing most of their operations, so the technological transition was seamless. The cultural transition required more effort, but most employees embraced the changes. They had experienced the improvements our systems brought to their daily work, and they trusted our leadership approach. Michael struggled the most with the new reality. He had gone from being the heir apparent to the family business to being a department manager in someone else's company. During our first quarterly performance review, he was sullen and defensive. "I know this is difficult," I told him privately, "but you're genuinely skilled at client relationships. You understand the traditional accounting market better than anyone on our team. We need that expertise and experience." "I'm your older brother," he said quietly. "I was supposed to be the successful one." "Success isn't determined by birth order or gender," I replied. "It's about creating value and solving problems. You can create tremendous value here, but only if you're willing to work with our team rather than against the new structure." Gradually, he adapted. He never became enthusiastic about the new arrangement, but he became professional and effective. He learned our systems, embraced our methods, and slowly earned the respect of our other department heads. 2 years after the merger, TechFlow Solutions was acquired by a major technology corporation for $180 million. I retained operational control as CEO, but the acquisition provided the resources and backing to expand nationally and internationally. The local business journal ran a cover story about the deal. From startup to success, how Sarah Chen built a tech empire, featured a large photo of me in our new headquarters, surrounded by the diverse team that had helped build something extraordinary from nothing. The article detailed our growth from a 2-person operation to a company with over 500 employees and offices in 12 cities. It specifically mentioned the acquisition of Chen and Associates as an example of how innovative companies could revitalize traditional industries through strategic integration. My family read the article in stunned silence. The woman they had dismissed as unrealistic had built something that dwarfed their family business. The little computer project they had mocked was now a major player in the industry. But the real vindication came 6 months later, at the annual industry conference where I was invited to give the keynote address on innovation and leadership in the digital age. The audience included hundreds of business leaders, including my parents and Michael. "When I started TechFlow Solutions," I began, looking out at the packed auditorium, "many people told me that my goals were unrealistic. They said that young women don't build technology companies. They said that innovation requires experience, that disruption demands credentials, that success needs permission." I paused, making eye contact with my family in the front row. They were wrong about all of it. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, dozens of young women approached me to say that my story had inspired them to pursue their own entrepreneurial dreams, despite family skepticism or industry bias. Today, TechFlow Solutions employs over 800 people across 15 offices. We've revolutionized project management for medium-sized businesses, and our software powers operations for companies generating billions in combined revenue. Michael has become one of our most effective client relationship managers, and he's learned to take pride in being part of something larger than what he could have built alone. My parents serve on our advisory board, and they've become advocates for supporting young entrepreneurs regardless of their background or gender. But the most meaningful moment came last month, when my mother called me with news that my teenage niece had announced her intention to study computer science and start her own company. "I told her she should talk to you," my mother said. "I told her that you would understand her dreams better than anyone." "What about warning her that it's unrealistic?" I asked. "I think," my mother said quietly, "that I've learned the difference between protecting someone and limiting them. I spent too many years assuming that your dreams were too big, instead of recognizing that our vision was too small." That evening, I sat in my office, the same building where I had once been dismissed as a dreamer, and looked at the photo of my grandmother that still hangs on my wall. Next to it is a framed quote from that business journal interview. "The key is identifying genuine innovation when you see it." Michael's words, spoken when he thought he was describing someone else's success. I kept that quote not as a reminder of their blindness, but as a reminder of something more important: that success isn't about proving people wrong, it's about proving possibilities right. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't be, and then using that success to help others do the same. The company they called a joke now employs their company. The daughter they saw as impractical now leads the family business. The dreams they dismissed as fantasy have become the foundation for hundreds of careers and millions in economic value. But perhaps most importantly, the little girl they told to be realistic grew up to redefine what realistic means, not just for herself, but for everyone who comes after her. That's not revenge. That's revolution. And it's only the beginning.